All right, so I just did the video on mounting the scope, and now I'm gonna do a quick one on bore sighting. Now, bore sighting is meant to get you on the paper. Never a good idea to bore sight and go hunt. It's not what these things are designed for. It will get you on the paper, it'll save you rounds. Then you can do your 2 or 3 shot sight in where you shoot, put your rifle in a vise or something that holds it, you shoot, you adjust the scope down to the bullet hole, you shoot again, you should be really close. But this should get you on the paper. Now what I have here is an older school bore sight. Now there's laser ones. If you don't have a bore sighter, you can do something that I've done 100 times in the past. It's really easy, which is take the bolt out, put the rifle someplace where it's solid, take a paper plate, and let me make sure I got the right one here. Take a paper plate, draw a little circle on it, tape it to the wall, look at your rifle, make sure you're looking at it, look through the bore, make sure it's on the dot, look through the scope, adjust the scope to the dot. It's not going to necessarily get you right on, but it's going to get you on the paper, and that's all that matters, because otherwise you spend so much ammo, and in this day and age when ammo is virtually impossible to find, that's worth its weight in gold. So on these older school ones, you just put your little jig in here and you get it settled down in there. You put this in the end of the barrel. And the reason, again, that I actually like this old school one. I've got a laser one, but I prefer this old school one. I've actually had this one be spot on, which I've had the others get pretty close, but never as close as this. So then you're going to look through here. Now keep in mind that what you see in here is a mirror image, so you have to adjust things backwards to get it on there. But looking through here, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that, hopefully you're going to be able to see this. I'm going to see if I can move this over here and show you through this scope what this looks like. Let me adjust it around. So there you see the grid. Let me hold that still there. Well, that's easier said than done, really, isn't it? Okay, you see the grid. I know it's cockeyed, but at least you can see what I'm looking at. The dark ones on the right being my scope. And then you're looking at the bore sighter itself. So I want to overlay my cross, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for, my reticle with this, because that's aligning it with the bore. So I need to come down. Now remember, people that want to sight your rifles in high, if you want your rifle to be, let's say 1.5 inches high at 100 yards, then in a bore sight it's got to be a little bit low, because again, you're not looking at it now, you're looking at a mirror image of it, so everything's a little bit opposite. So I would go just a hair below the line, and that should get me close. Now while I'm here, I'm going to talk real quick about these scopes. So scopes now have numbers, of course, on your dials that you use for different ranges. Those are usually relatively close, not super close, because they can't be for every caliber unless you go caliber specific or have a reticle made just for your rifle, which is a pretty good idea if you could put the $100, 110 or whatever it is. Pretty good idea to have that cut for the ammo you're shooting, barrel length, all that. However, there are numbers on these. So what you've got to do is figure out what your numbers are going to be. And everybody says, what are you talking about what the numbers are going to be? So I get this, I go out there on the pattern board and I shoot it, and I got it sighted in. And it's sighted in 1.5 inches high at 100. I now have the option of taking this reticle loose and moving it around and resetting it to 0 according to where my scope's at. This is where it comes in for you. Do you want, so if that's at 100 yards, which is where I'm going to sight this rifle, do I want that to be 0 on my reticle, or do I want it to be 100 or 1? The number would be 1. It would be 1 at 100. I tend to set mine at 100 because then 2 is usually roughly 200. 3 starts getting a little off, but it kind of gives you an idea of where you're at on your reticle all the time. If you set it at 0, you technically zeroed it at 100. There's nothing wrong with setting that at 0. You just got to keep in mind that when you go to 1, that's 200 yards, give or take. Because you set the 0 at 0. So I like to go out. I won't do it yet. I'll do it once I get it on paper and once I know that it's hitting where I want it. I will take this reticle loose. There's 2 little screws in this. There might even be 3 in this Vortex. Take this cap loose. I'll turn it around to where the 1 is at the line, at my sight-in line, and then I'll screw it back on. That way, from that point on, I know if I go out west and I'm hunting and I'm shooting, I'm turning my scope because I'm shooting longer range and I'm coming back. Then I come back here to whitetail hunting in Kentucky. I know that I can put this back on 1 and my 100's back. That way I can go down to the range, I can fire around with it at 1 at 100 yards and check it and just make sure everything's fine after it flew and got beat all to pieces on the hairlines, but that's another story. But again, get that bore sight, get it roughly on, go down to your paper, get it nice and set up in a vise or however you shoot, fire that bullet, adjust it down to that bullet hole or up or wherever that bullet hole happens to be, and then you should be close, fire a couple more and you'd be good to go. That's when you take this reticle loose and reset it however you want. Because right now I had this scope on another rifle, so it's obviously a little bit off, but right now, this scope sighted in, that number's at 7. So I turned it around that far from the Browning long range that I had this scope on before. So I'll need to undo this reticle, turn it back around to 1 and reset it after I've shot it. That gives you an idea of bore sighting, and once you get to the range, how to get this thing sighted in quick so you don't use a lot of super expensive ammo because it's hard to come by right now. And you can reset this reticle to 0 and you're good to go. Another quick point, I would only reference where my windage is at because windage is one of those things that you tend to not adjust once it's on. You only adjust it back and forth. You do need to make a mental note of where that's at. So right now my windage is at 2, a little bit over 2. It's like 2.2, 2.3, something like that. Make a mental note of that so again you can always come back to 0, because if I go down here and I shoot and it's nice and calm and I've got that set, then I go out somewhere, it's windy, I adjust it around and all that. Ooh, I get back here and now it's back to being calm again. I want to be able to reset that to where it was, so I would just write down battery on my windage is at 2.3. Now, could you set it at 0? Could you set it at 1? Of course you could. Usually I just write down what the battery is on it. Sometimes I'll tape it on the stock. I usually keep it in my phone under my notes. I'll have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, usually 800. And then I'll have different windages in there as well. But it'll also have my note for where my windage base point is. So just a little tip there for you. Hopefully those help, and that'll get you bore sighted on the paper.